They told me, son, you're special. You were born to do great things. You know what? They were right.
Released almost 20 years ago, BioShock is a FPS inspired by System Shock, as well as some sort of critique of two books of Ayn Rand, Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, or more specifically, the philosophy of objectivism. We'll talk more later on about it. I was in the mood to read those two books to know a little bit more about the inspirations for BioShock, until the moment I realized that Atlas Shrugged is a book over 1000 pages long, and that the audiobook lasts around 20 hours. Useless to say that it made me change my mind real quick. I've then decided to settle for an explanation by someone more knowledgeable than myself on the subject. So my opinion on it will be biased, but it's a sacrifice we're gonna have to make this time, because I'm neither a great philosopher nor a masochist. All of this is definitely not required to appreciate the game in any way, but I think talking about it will help enjoy it a little bit more. The game starts with Jack, the character we'll be playing, sitting in a plane, smoking, and looking at a picture of him with his mom and dad. He then pulls out a wrapped gift before the plane crashes in the ocean. This is where we'll finally be able to control Jack. What remains of the plane is in flame, and we seem to be the only survivor inside. Luckily for us, there is a lighthouse close by. Now is a good time to enjoy the sight, as it's probably one of the best views we'll get in the entire game, and it didn't age one bit. The flame on the ocean in the middle of the night. There is something peaceful to it. And it's not over yet, because once we're done with the view and decide to enter the lighthouse, the door behind us will close, leaving us in the dark until finally the lights come on, showing us with a golden statue of a man holding a banner saying, "No gods or kings, only man." Simplistic, but such a great intro for a great game, and BioShock could really be defined by that. The game is at its peak very early on, and then slowly start to worsen as time passes by. Now don't get me wrong, it never become bad, but the first few hours of BioShock are the very best, and I'll try to show it in this video as well as I can. Now that we're done contemplating that statue, we'll go down the stairs and ride a bathysphere to the depths of the ocean.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture. A city where the artist would not fear censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, rapture can become your city as well.
Be quick about it. The splicer
We've just met Andrew Ryan, an eccentric billionaire and mind behind Rapture. And as we're about to arrive, we witness two people talking. One is named Johnny, the other is Atlas. Forget about Johnny, he doesn't have long to live. As for Atlas, he isn't really there with us, unlike the now dead Johnny. But he's instead talking to us through our radio. Atlas says that he aims to keep us alive, and that we need to get to higher ground for that. Just a quick note, those enemies we'll face are called splicers, so I'll call them this way. There is different types of splicers. For example, that one we just met is a spider splicer, but I won't mention their types every time, unless it makes sense to do so. We'll simply call them splicers, that's easier. We are now gonna have to get that splicer out of hiding, and trust Atlas on that one, because we are unarmed right now. Luckily, Atlas seemed to be a man of his word. Short after the splicer leave us alone, we now find our very first weapon, a wrench, which might remind some of you of Half-Life, and I doubt that's unintentional. We are now crouching to get to the next area, and it won't take us long to meet the very first enemy in the game, a random splicer trying to throw us a flaming couch in the face while we climb the stairs. Nothing big there. This enemy is pretty straightforward to beat, and is simply there to teach us how to fight in melee. We'll then get up another set of stairs to reach our first Gatherer's Garden, which are usually some kind of shops where we can purchase powers called plasmids that will help us in our adventure. We'll talk soon enough about the different possibilities of the gameplay when we'll reach an area with little to talk about. Just know that while usually we have to pay for it with a resource called Adam, this time it will be free for us, because the tonic is ready and just waiting to be injected in our arm. What that tonic does is rewrite our genetic code and give us a superpower. In this case, the possibility to use lightning, which is pretty sick and very useful, as we'll see very soon.
This little fish looks like he just had his cherry popped. Wonder if he's still got some Adam on him. Hear that? Let's bug. Weak! You're a weak chopper. This little fish ain't worth towing it with no big daddy. Yellow! Always have been. You'll be no better off with a metal daddy, little fish. See you floating.
Look, Mr. Bubbles, it's an angel. I can see light coming from his belly. Wait a minute, he's still breathing. It's alright. I know he'll be an angel soon.
That was a little sister and her big daddy. We'll see them again very soon, and I'll explain there why they decided not to kill us. The only way out of this area is through that door, with the broken switch, but our newfound power might just be what we need to open it. One electrical arc, and we're able to override it. While we pass through that tunnel, the tail of the plane is gonna come crashing on it and flood the whole area. Nothing big is happening, luckily. As we walk to the next area, we'll meet two hostiles, and we'll learn about our bread and butter combo, shock them with lightning, and then smash them with the wrench while they are stunned. It is very effective and leave them no chances. The only downside to this is maybe that we will need to use Eve hypos to refill our Eve gauge, or more commonly called mana. As I'm starting to use lots of complicated words, and I do not want to lose any of you, I'll explain quickly. Adam is the resource to purchase new powers, passive or active later on. Plasmids will be our superpowers. Gin tonics will be passive, we'll be able to unlock. As for Eve, it's simply the mana bar. I hope I made that clear enough. Now, Eve doesn't refill automatically, and you need Eve hypos, or syringes, as I call them, to refill it, and be able to continue using your powers. Those can be found almost everywhere, or bought at a vending machine. so nothing big there, but we have to keep in mind that Bioshock has a pretty old school philosophy with mana that do not allow you to recover it by any other way than using consumables, and we can only stock up to 9 consumables at a time, be it medikits or EVE syringes. We'll also see the first Vita chamber in the game. Those will resurrect you when you die, if you play with them activated, which make it impossible to have a game over basically. We'll talk about them again much later in this video, as they are important to the lore of the game, but for now, you can forget about them. We climb another set of stairs, and we're heading toward the elevator room. We'll need to use one of those elevators to get higher and evade the flood. Slight problem, there is a fire, and another splicer that seemed to not enjoy his time here all that much. He tries to run toward us, but a 1-2 with thunder and wrench will make quick work of him. Let's now take the elevator up. Atlas will tell us what he wants from us.
Listen, I've got a family. I need to get them out of here, but the splicers have cut me off from them. If you can reach them in Neptune's bounty, then maybe, just maybe, I know you must feel like the unluckiest man in the world right now, but you're the only hope I'll ever see my wife and child again. Go to Neptune's bounty. Find my family, please.
Shortly after that, we are now in front of a lady singing a lullaby to a revolver. We'll get rid of her and take the weapon. It will be useful. Next area is the Kashmir restaurant. It's a pretty small area, and we won't stay here for long. We can see written on a sign, Happy New Year 1959, which is when things turned the wrong way in Rapture. We're currently in 1960, so a little bit more than 1 year after the incident. We learned this due to the first audio diary in this area, that belonged to a certain person called Diane McClintock, who seems to be the girlfriend of Andrew Ryan, and that is passing the New Year Eve alone due to Andrew being busy working. At first, everything seems to be fine, outside of her melancholy, but toward the end of the diary, we hear people screaming, while Diane McClintock claims to be wounded and bleeding. Tensions in Rapture were already building up for years before that, but the New Year Eve 1959 is when things got out of control. Roughly 14 years after the project of building Rapture started, or 8 years after its construction was achieved. There is 122 audio diaries in Bioshock. It is the main way the game used to tell its story, and we'll listen together to all of those that matter the most. I'll give you a quick summary of those that drag on for too long, like this one. Now back to the Kashmir restaurant. We'll visit the kitchen, only to find out that there isn't really anything of value there. Visiting that part of the restaurant will make 2 splicers spawn in the partially flooded area, where we've just found the first audio diary. In reality, it is some kind of tutorial, where the game wants to show you that you can electrify the water to kill the enemies, and that you can use your plasmids on the environment to your advantage, which is pretty cool and not limited to thunder and water. We'll later have the power to ignite and telekinesis. Those two together can make some nice Molotov cocktail on the alcohol bottle that you find almost everywhere. And I'm sure there is some other possibilities that I didn't find. Bioshock allows you to be creative. Or not. It's up to you. Which is great. Next, we'll pass through a hole in the bathroom's wall to reach the top of the theater. There, we'll see another little sister harvesting Adam from a dead body. I already explained more or less what Adam is for us the player, and why we need to get more. It basically allows us to become stronger with more powers and passives. What I didn't specify is that everybody in Rapture wants it, and why they want it. To make it short, you can compare Adam to an extremely addictive drug that have the possibility to rewrite your genetic code, but drive you insane and change your appearance if you stop consuming it, due to the fact that it is extremely unstable by nature. The only way to prevent the nasty effects from happening is to consume more Adam, which bring you in a loop of self-destruction. You might now wonder why we are not getting those nasty effects. Because we are not consuming raw Adam like those splicers, but instead we use plasmids and gene tonics, which are made of refined Adam, that allow the user to avoid the nasty effects as long as he doesn't go overboard with it. To consume more Adam, those splicers do not have many choices. The Little Sisters tend to have a bunch on them, as they harvested from dead bodies. But as we're about to see, with this fellow that crossed the line, the Little Sisters are indeed powerless, but the Big Daddies that accompany them are not.
That's the Big Daddy. She got it on him. He keeps her safe.
Now, I've said a little earlier that I would explain why the Little Sister decided not to kill us. And it's pretty simple. Little Sisters simply do not kill anybody, and just harvest from dead bodies. Since we weren't an angel, as they call dead people, she just had no interest in doing anything to us. Neither the Little Sisters nor the Big Daddies are aggressive. Big Daddies only threaten you if you get too close to a Little Sister, but otherwise, they simply do not care about you and are passive, unless you attack them. Obviously, attacking them will be mandatory if you want more power later on, as you cannot harvest or rescue a Little Sister as long as the Big Daddy lives. Next area will be a transit hub between the Medical Pavilion, Neptune's Bounty, and the Footlight Theater we're coming from. As we are about to head to Neptune's Bounty, the alarm rings, and the area is put under lockdown. We're stuck here with a few splicers. We'll bait them into the water and zap. Atlas contacts us and tells us that Andrew Ryan has found us, and that he shut down access to Neptune. Our only way out is through the Medical Pavilion, and as we head to the door leading us there, Andrew Ryan appears on screen, accusing us of being a CIA or KGB agent.
So tell me, friend, which one of the bitches sent you? The KGB wolf or the CIA jackal? Here's the news. Rapture isn't some sunken ship for you to plunder. And Andrew Ryan isn't a giddy socialite who can be slapped around by government muscle. And with that, farewell. Or до свидания, jackal.
We've got to have standards. If you're in trying times.
Phew, we're finally out of this hell, thanks to Atlas for having our back there. As we can see, Bioshock has some tense moments. I would even consider it a survival horror game, at least for the first few hours of the game. Later on, the game loses that part of its identity, and the scary parts are getting few and far between. The Medical Pavilion that we're about to enter in a few seconds is where horror is at its peak. First area of the Medical Pavilion is the foyer, or the reception desk area if you prefer. To go further, we need to find our way to the emergency access. We'll meet a disabled security bot on our way, blocking the door. Another interesting way of introducing a tutorial into the game. We'll have to hack it to pass. The hacking system in Bioshock offers you 3 options. Using an auto hack, but it's much too early for that right now. Buying the machine with money, which is often expensive, and then again, we do not have the currency for that yet. And finally, simply doing it manually, which is what we're gonna do right now. Hacking is some kind of mini-game where a liquid will pour into pipes. We need to use different types of pipes to link the beginning to the end of the puzzle while avoiding bombs or alarms. If we hit a bomb, Jack will be severely damaged, and if we hit an alarm, for the next 60 seconds, security bots will fly at us and try to take us down. Those can be hacked, of course, and the alarm can be stopped in exchange of money at a bot shutdown panel. Overall, it is pretty simple, and at first you won't mind it too much, but toward the end of the game, you most likely will use your money and auto hacks to be done with it. It's extremely repetitive, can get boring relatively fast, and sometimes you can even face a puzzle where there is only dead ends everywhere. Or sometimes, a puzzle that asks of you to have the reflex of a puma and to directly swap the first tile to avoid being stuck. Overall, it is really not the best part of the game, and I doubt anyone likes it. Luckily, it's somewhat easier early on, and when it gets tougher, you'll have more money to deal with it. We also have a few gin tonics that help with hacking and make it easier by reducing the amount of alarms or bombs, which can greatly help, but we are limited to 6 engineering tonics at a time, so it's up to us to make a choice. Overall, it's really not a fun minigame. It would be okay if we only had to do it once or twice, but the reality is different. Hacking is everywhere, as we'll also be able to hack merchants, healing stations, etc. Once hacked, those will sell us their product at a reduced cost. Healing stations can also be broken with the range to receive one health kit instead. So while it is bothersome, at least there are easy ways to deal with it. Now, back to where we left off. We finally crossed a door the security bot was blocking on our way to the emergency access. Fast forward a fight with a few splicers, we finally get to the console. But as we try to activate it, access denied. Atlas tells us that we need a key from Dr. Steinman, the man running this place. To get to him, we'll need to activate the electrical override switch. That's where we'll find the machine gun, which look almost exactly like a Tommy gun. Upon opening the doors to the main area of the medical pavilion, a few splicers enter the foyer to hunt us down. We'll kill them and then get on our way. For the second time in the game, we'll see a ghost. The first time was in the bathroom of the Kashmir restaurant, but as it wasn't really interesting, I didn't mention it. Ghosts are simply leftovers memory from people that used to live there. They help telling the game's story, and if you wonder why we do see them, it is probably due to us using Adam from Dead Bodies, that the little sisters harvested. Now, obviously at this state of the game, we didn't really gather any Adam yet, outside of that plasmid that gave us electric powers at the start, so it probably come from there. We are now in the main area of the medical pavilion. That area has a lot of turrets that can be dangerous, but our electric power disables them and allow us to hack them, which will turn those turrets into allies, permanently, or until a splicer is able to destroy it. Obviously, hacking the turrets allow us to be somewhat safer, as they'll always help us, but they have the downside of friendly fire. If splicers are running after us, our own turret might hurt us while trying to aim at them. It is a double-edged sword. There is no limits of turrets we can hack, unlike the security drones that are limited to 2 at a time, but those follow us, unlike the turrets that simply cannot move. And coming back to a previous map won't change the turrets into hostile again. Once they've been hacked, they'll stay by your side until the end of the game. I think it is worth mentioning, as very few games do this. This area, also from my experience, very often suffer from ragdoll bugs, which tend to be noisy, but outside of that doesn't do much bad. Going forward, we start to witness messages painted in blood, and collect a few audio diaries from Dr. Steinman, and we can most definitely tell that he's batshit crazy, obsessed with beauty, and completely addicted to Adam. That, and the fact that he's a surgeon, nothing can go wrong. Since we're in the main lobby of the medical pavilion, we'll have a few smaller areas to visit. BioShock is of course not an open world game, far from it. It is a rather linear game that allows for a bit of exploration. It does have some secrets hidden everywhere, and when you'll arrive in a new map, you'll have to explore to progress. But if you know where to find everything, you can go much faster by simply going to the right areas directly. BioShock has a great level design, and that remained true from the beginning till the end. The first area on the list is called Eternal Flame. By approaching the Eternal Flame, we'll witness a splicer thrown against the wall by an explosion. It won't take long to realize that it is due to a new type of splicer that we'll now have to fight, the Nitro Splicer. Those throw grenades at you while trying to keep their distances. If you end up getting too close, they'll throw a smoke grenade and will try to flee. They can be very bothersome if not dealt properly with, as grenades hurt quite a lot, but we'll manage. A few moments later, we'll notice that the Eternal Flame is in fact a crematorium. It won't take long for us to spot the very first camera of our playthrough, which, very similar to security bots or turrets, can also be hacked. Those cameras simply summon security bots on anyone triggering them. Us, or the enemies if hacked, which make it a great ally to cover our back. Short after that, we get our very first gin tonic by cremating a body. The Hacker's Delight tonic will be standing in its ashes. Next, we go upstairs to find the Incinerate plasmid, one of the most important plasmid in the game, as it allows us, to melt the ice blocking one of the doors of the main area. Obviously, Andrew Ryan won't take it well and will promise anybody that get our head 1000 Adam. With that, a few splicers will try to get rid of us. That trail of oil on the floor make it obvious that this is another tutorial to teach us about this plasmid. The result remains satisfying. We are now out of the Eternal Flame, as there is nothing else for us to do here. Next stop is the Twilight Fields, that used to be blocked by ice, but now that we can ignite things, it is no longer a problem. The Twilight Fields is a funeral house, and overall a pretty secondary mini area. There isn't much to do there, outside of looting. We'll go straight to the left to see a splicer hiding behind a coffin. When we'll get close, that splicer will throw the coffin down and try to attack us. Once dealt with, after a few seconds, a door in the opposite side of the room will open, revealing a turret trying to gun us down. Behind that turret, there will be a safe. Those safes simply contain useful loot, such as medikits or bullets. In this case, there will be $17, 11 bullets of shotgun that we do not have yet, and 3 armor-piercing rounds for our pistol. One of the specificity of Bioshock is that almost every single weapon will have 3 types of ammo that you can collect for different purposes. The basic ammunitions will often be cheaper and easier to find, but do less damage. But we'll also have 2 other different types of ammunitions that differ from one weapon to another. In this case, armor-piercing rounds are more effective against armored enemies, like Big Daddies for example. Now, back to the Twilight Fields, as we still have 2 more doors to open. After the left one, we'll go to the middle one that is in fact a morgue. Going forward, we'll see the shadow of a splicer in the back of the room. But as we're about to get closer, lights out. When the light finally comes back, the splicer isn't there anymore. On our way back to the entrance, the splicer slide through a locker and try to kill us. I have to say that while playing, this was definitely one of the areas that made me feel the least comfortable, as I get easily spooked. But as I'm rewatching it, I realized that it isn't nearly as scary as it seemed when I first played it. The reason why the beginning of the game works better with horror is also probably due to the fact that we have little to no weapons and only a few bullets. I also imagine that playing the game in its hardest difficulty can easily increase your stress in those rooms, as you feel more vulnerable. Next and last door require a code to enter, but close to that door is a splicer weeping and not paying attention to us. The code is close to her. 0451. We got the code, and finally can open the door to see what's behind. Our first automatic hack tool and a bunch of supplies. Nothing really important, but as I mentioned before, this area is not mandatory to progress through the story. It is simply there to reward exploration, and I wanted to show what I meant. In the future, I obviously won't mention those bonus areas, unless there is something important we have to talk about. We are now done with the Twilight Fields. Next is the dental service area, that is also blocked by ice, but ice won't ever be a problem again. We'll see our next weapon on the ground, the shotgun, and as we take it, the lights go off. The shotgun was set as a bait by the splicers to attack us by surprise. The only downside to their plan is that they baited us with a shotgun that we'll now use to kill them. Once rid of all of them, the lights turn on again. This area is once again mostly secondary, if not for the shotgun we just grabbed and another plasmid that we need to progress to Dr. Steinman, the telekinesis, which is just a few meters away from us, in the closest room, left without any enemies to guard it. But as we have a limit of 2 plasmids currently, we'll be forced to give up Incinerate for now. We won't lose it for long though, as all the plasmids and gene tonics that we'll obtain will be stored in the gene bank that we'll be able to access through a machine with the same name. We'll quickly go to Painless Dental, as it is nearby, an area with a weird fog inside. I totally shat my pants there. We are now on our way to Dr. Steinman's lair, the surgery area. We'll cross an underwater tunnel, see a Big Daddy, and Steinman is here, but the entrance collapsed. That's why we need telekinesis. That guy throwing grenade is gonna help us. Steinman is close, but before reaching him, we'll need to cross a corridor full of drones and turrets. Next area is Aesthetics Ideals. No more running for Steinman.
She won't stay still! I want to make them beautiful, but they always turn out wrong! That one's too fat! This one's too tall! This one too symmetrical! And now, what's this, guys? An intruder!
As you can see, Dr. Steinman isn't a particularly thrilling boss fight. He's simply a normal splicer, but with much more health points. Overall, boss fights are something that Bioshock doesn't do too well, and easily one of the least polished aspects of the game. But in the game's defense, Steinman is probably the worst of them all. What could be considered the best bosses are simply not bosses at all, but the Big Daddies, as they offer interesting fights, at least early on. Because once you have your entire arsenal of weapons and plasmids, they'll simply become a triviality. Now that we're done with that nutcase, we've finally got the keys that we wanted. Let's go back to the medical pavilion foyer. On our way back, a tunnel will collapse and force us to go another way. As we enter that area, we see a Big Daddy being thrown against the wall. Splicers killed him, and the last one of them remaining alive now want to hurt the little sister to get her Adam.
Stay away from her, or it is you who will be shot next.
Easy now, Doctor. He's just looking for a wee bit of Adam. Just enough to get by.
I'll not have him hurt my little ones.
It's okay, lad. I'm not a child. Not anymore, Alex. Dr. Tenenbaum saw to that.
Bitte do not hurt her. Have you no pocket?
Aye, that's a pretty servant coming from the Gulu. Cooked up them creatures in the first place. Took fine little girls and turned them into that, didn't you? Listen to me, boyo. You won't survive without the antidote. Things are carrying. Are you prepared to trade your life, the lives of my wife and child, for Tenenbaum of Frankenstein?
Here! There is another. Use this. Free them from their torment. I will make it to be worth your while. Somehow.
This is Tenenbaum, the woman that we could say created those little sisters. She offers us a gin tonic that leaves us with a choice. Little sisters are hosts of sea slugs, implanted in their stomach. Apparently, only little girls are viable hosts. By doing so, they produce Adam at a much faster rate than sea slugs originally did, producing Adam up to 30 times faster. They also are almost invulnerable, due to Adam in their body that regenerate them at an insane speed. Their only weakness is when they end up being harvested, as it removes the sea slug in their belly, which leads to their death. The little sisters do not see the world the same way as other children do, as they were kidnapped and conditioned to gather Adam on dead bodies until they could be harvested. Now, with that gin tonic we're able to heal them and get rid of that sea slug without having to kill them. The downside is simply that we'll get less Adam, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. And you might ask yourself why Tenenbaum didn't shoot us. I'll explain it in due time. Back in the main area of the medical pavilion, Big Daddy will be there, and we'll face it to rescue the little sister that we protect. That Big Daddy is called the Bouncer, and is the first of the two existing types of Big Daddies in the game. The Bouncer is the one we can see on the game's cover, and is in my opinion the weakest of the two. I've heard that at first there was supposed to be 4 types of Big Daddies, but 2 of them got scrapped. And it's true that toward the end of the game, only having 2 different types of Big Daddies can hurt a bit, as we'll fight them both around 10 times. But I suppose better to have a few different types than bad ones, right? Finally, we are back to the emergency access, and this time all goes according to plan. We can finally take the Bathysphere to our next destination, Neptune's Bounty. A warm welcome from Ryan. Going through the tunnel, we'll meet Rose again. This time she won't try to kill us. Yet. And I do not think I did introduce her the first time we met, so let me do it now. Rose is that spider splicer that killed Johnny at the very beginning of the game. She is more powerful than regular spider splicers, and will be seen sometime in this area, trying to be a pain in the butt. we could call her a mini-boss. Next area is the Lower Wharf, where we'll meet Rosie, the second and last type of Big Daddy the game has to offer. While the Bouncer was all about melee, Rosie is all about range. Armed with a rivet gun and capable of throwing grenades, it is in my opinion the most dangerous enemy in the entire game. And we'll see that I in fact died against him there. This was my sole death in the entire game, and it really showed that the Big Daddies aren't to be messed with unprepared. Now, with the Vita chambers, obviously dying is never really a problem, as we can easily come back to fight our target that is still wounded from our previous fight. Many people actually dislike the Vita chambers, but as we can disable them in the options, I do not personally think that it matters much. Now that we've defeated the Big Daddy and rescued our third little sister, Tenenbaum is offering us a gift. So, in reality, harvesting Little Sisters will grant us 160 Adam, while rescuing them only will grant us 80. But, every 3 Little Sisters rescued, Tenenbaum will decide to gift us something. 200 Adam, and a few items. In theory, harvesting them gives us a little bit more Adam, yes. But, it's really negligible. Harvesting the Little Sisters is really only useful in the early game. After a while, it doesn't matter much, as we only gain 40 Adam more every 3 Little Sisters harvested. There is a total of 21 Little Sisters in the game that will grant us 280 Adam more by harvesting them if we decide to do that instead of rescuing them, which isn't huge. But this isn't the reason we are doing it that way. We're simply not the kind of people to hurt children, that's all. By exploring the Lower Wharf and finding audio diaries, we start to hear about a fellow named Fontaine that seemed to be in conflict with Andrew Ryan. If Ryan didn't seem like an angel, Fontaine doesn't seem much better, from what we're able to hear. And since our next destination is Fontaine Fisheries, we might get to know him better. Once we enter Fontaine Fisheries, we see once again rose petals sprinkled from the roof. This time, Rose will talk to us. Not that it matters, as she barely makes sense and simply wants to kill us. But for now, she doesn't seem to be aggressive. Toward the end of the hallway is a big door. Fontaine Fisheries are closed, and we need to knock first. Luckily, Atlas did warn them we were coming. Peach Wilkins accepts to open the door at the condition that we find him a camera first. When suddenly, as we're about to be done talking, we hear somebody humming. That's Rose. She is back, and this time, she doesn't feel like going away empty-handed. As we fight Rose, it seems pretty obvious that she's a bit too strong for us. But good old Peach Wilkins will send security bots to help us, forcing Rose to flee or die. We owe him one there. After a few more lines of dialogues with Peach Wilkins, he'll give us a grenade launcher to help defend ourselves. Peach Wilkins seemed to be extremely paranoid of Fontaine, while Atlas claimed that Fontaine is dead, and that everybody knows it. Whatever they say, we now have to find that camera if we want to get in. On our way to find the camera, Atlas will warn us that Peach Wilkins isn't to be trusted, and that he thinks he might try to backstab us once we bring him what he wants, but there isn't any other way if we want to get in. To get the camera in the Wharf Master's office, we need to cross the upper wharf first. There, in an audio diary, we learn how Tenenbaum ended up finding about the sea slug. I'll let you listen to the audio diary itself, as I'm sure you'll appreciate her voice more than mine.
I saw one of the smugglers having a game of catching on the docks today, and this surprised me because his hands were crippled.
Not great, right? Wait, let me fix that.
I saw one of the smugglers having a game of catching on the docks today, and this surprised me because his hands were crippled during the war. He was unloading the barge the other day when he was bitten from the sea slug. He woke up the next morning and he found he could move his fingers for the first time in years. I asked him if he still had that sea slug. As luck would have it, he did.
The audio mixing in Bioshock is often really bad, and if you have the misfortune of engaging into a fight while listening to a dialogue, it becomes really hard to hear everything, outside of gunshots obviously. And in case you're wondering, I didn't change anything in the audio settings when recording this playthrough, so it doesn't come from me. But thinking about it, I should probably have tinkered a bit more with the settings, to be sure everything was fine. If you one day desire to play through Bioshock, please remember to lower the SFX audio, so you can hear the dialogues properly, as those are really good. Voice acting and sound design are two things that Bioshock nailed completely. It's such a shame that it is ruined by bad audio mixing. And from now on, I'll be increasing the sound of every audio diaries you'll hear, to be sure that random sounds do not bother you. Here's another one, telling the method Andrew Ryan used to find those little girls.
Darling Masha, we don't know what has happened to you. Ryan's men have taken you away and said you are needed to save Rapture. Who needs a child to save a city? But I see these little girls crawling out of these vents, and I only wonder if you might one day crawl out of this vent and find this note. We look for you, but if you find this, come to us at the Fighting McDonald's in room number 7. The code to our room is 7533. We miss you, our darling child.
Once the Wharfmaster office is reached, we'll quickly understand that it is full of turrets, and I really mean it when I say full. It is probably the single area in the game with the most turrets, which can be more or less dangerous, depending on the difficulty we're playing the game on. But since we're actually playing in normal difficulty, it's bearable. Once done neutralizing every turret and security camera in the area, we can finally crawl through a hole and enter the interrogation room in order to grab that camera. But we are not entirely done with what we have to do yet. Peach Wilkins wants more than the camera. He also wants pictures of a few spider splicers that are quite dangerous. But now that we have the camera, the game is gonna become slightly easier. Yes, it isn't the kind of phrase you'll hear every day, but the camera isn't only there to take pictures for Wilkins, quite the contrary. As we take pictures from enemies with the camera, we'll obtain different buffs, such as more damage against them, sometimes against everyone, or also from time to time, a gin tonic will be offered to us. Clearly, the camera is mandatory in Bioshock, especially in the later difficulties, as without it, we simply will take much longer to kill enemies. But that comes with a problem. We will need to take pictures of every enemy until we max them to get every buff possible. So what will happen? In most fights, we'll start by spamming our camera on the target before finally taking out our weapons. We can take approximately a picture of each enemies 3 times before we can fight. And while it is certainly not the most common gameplay mechanic we can see in video games, it is also quite tedious, and it really bothered me to indulge in this before being able to play normally. Now don't get me wrong, the camera is a good idea, but it is too grindy in my opinion, and for a good while we'll have to deal with it. It would maybe have been better if it didn't require you to take around 20 pictures of each enemy type. You might ask yourself now, why don't you take pictures of their dead bodies then? Well, as you can imagine now, if I'm answering this, there is a problem. You can only take 1 picture of a dead enemy instead of 3 of a living one. Also, a dead enemy only gives you a C rank picture, while enemies that are alive and fighting have more chance to grant you a A rank. All of this doesn't change anything, outside of the time you'll take to be done taking pictures. A rank grants much more experience than any other ranks, and thus make it quicker. To make it short, the targets have to be alive, and if possible, even better, fighting. Since we have 2 more spider splicers to picture, we'll have to go to Jet Postal and the Fighting McDonald's Tavern, 2 areas that are quite irrelevant to the story, but that are full of audio diaries. As we reach the tavern, we can notice that if Jack drinks too much alcohol, our screen starts to blur. And that's not all. Alcohol, while giving us a bit of health, is also draining our EVE gauge, which isn't too great. Cigarettes are the complete opposite. They give us back a bit of EVE, but drain our health points. And there is a few other consumables, but they do not have any negative side effects. There is also a gin tonic later on in the game that will allow Jack to consume alcohol and to gain both health and EVE while doing so, which is honestly quite good, as there are bottles everywhere. Behind the door, locked by a code given to us in the previous audio diaries, we'll find what happened to the parents of Marsha, that little girl that ended up becoming a little sister and that Andrew Ryan kidnapped.
We saw our Masha today. We barely recognize her. That's her, Sam said. You're crazy, I told him. That thing? That is our Masha? But he was right. She was drawing blood out of a corpse by Fontaine Fisheries. And then when she was done, she walked off hand in hand with one of those awful golems. Masha!
On our way back to Fontaine Fisheries, we'll meet Rose, one last time, trying to trap us with a gin tonic. Upon being close to death, she'll flee. It is in fact possible to kill her there, but I simply failed. Or did I? I'm not entirely sure it was her, but because she was looting 2 auto-hack tools and look exactly the same, I'll assume that Rose finally met her demise there. As you can imagine, most enemies look exactly the same with a few variants, and I have to say that I never found that bothersome. It is a pretty old game now, and it never has been a very important detail to me. At least, the different types of splicers are somewhat different from each other's and can be recognized easily. In fact, Bioshock is still relatively pretty to this day, if you disregard the characters' models that show their age. The Art Deco art style is still doing wonder, and while Bioshock isn't old that new any longer, the overall designs of the levels prevent it from ever being too ugly. Now, back to Fontaine Fisheries, to give Peach Wilkins those damn pictures and get inside. But before we can get in, he asks of us to get rid of all our weapons, all but the wrench and our plasmids, as nobody can take those away from us. As we enter the main area of Fontaine Fisheries, it becomes soon clear that we fell into a trap. Atlas was right, Peach Wilkins isn't to be trusted. That old dog doesn't seem to believe in Fontaine's death, and think that we've been sent by Fontaine himself to get rid of him. Whatever his paranoia tells him, he is now our enemy, and we'll need to fix the problem at hand without any weapons, as they were taken from us. That area has a few turrets that we can hack to help ourselves. Since Peach Wilkins is nothing else but a glorified nitro splicers, basically those that throw grenades, we can also use telekinesis to use his own weapon against him, or electrify the ground, as there are puddles of water a bit everywhere. Possibilities are plenty here, but that boss fight ain't as easy as the first one, as he'll get help from a few smugglers, and it all require more creativity than against Steinman. Luckily, that area also have a vending machine that allow us to grab a few more first aid kits as we start to be low on those. Once Peach Wilkins finally bite the dust, we can explore that area and discover that it wasn't only used to smuggle and store fishes, but also to torture people and interrogate them. On the lower part of the fishery, we'll find a weapon upgrade station, the very first in the game, which allow us to upgrade any weapons we want once. Every weapon can be upgraded up to 2 times, with different bonus. Those upgrades can make a big difference, and will especially change the appearance of your weapons, which is always nice. Once done exploring, we can finally burn the ice block covering the way leading to the smuggler's hideout.
You got it! Should be smooth sailing from here. I'll meet you up ahead. I'm right outside the submarine bay, but I can't get in. I'll need you for that. My family can't be more than 100 yards away. Hit the switch up there in the control booth and let me in. I think it's time to shake hands and get acquainted.
You've had your fun, but enough is enough. If you press that button, you'll learn what it means to truly be my enemy.
After a while, we finally see that submarine and enter the control room. We're one button away from freeing Atlas's family.
So dark in here. If only your friend could look up and see. Maybe you could warn him. If only you could do something, anything. Except just stand here and watch him die.
Nothing is going according to plan. Ryan has sabotaged the control room switch. Atlas and his family are now in danger. We gotta help quickly. But they're not the only one being attacked. There are splicers everywhere.
You ooze in like an assassin, and then you try to sneak out like a thief. You're no CIA spook. Who are you? Why have you come here? There's two ways to deal with a mystery. Uncover it, or eliminate it.
And when we finally arrive to the submarine, it explodes. Atlas' family is dead. Andrew Ryan killed them. We now have to get out of here and reach Arcadia in order to ride the bathysphere in the rolling hills, leading us to Andrew Ryan himself. Arcadia is a very peculiar area, as we'll see. We could call it the lungs of Rapture, as it is an artificial forest. In Arcadia, we'll start meeting a new type of splicers, called the Houdini splicers. Those teleports everywhere and use the fire plasmids, like us. Sometimes they also try to call for help in order to bait us into traps, which might work once, maybe twice, but never thrice. Arcadia, or at least its very beginning, comes back to what we've seen in the medical pavilion, with great sound design and a tense atmosphere. Those Houdini splicers, being able to be everywhere in the blink of an eye, never help to feel safe. Now, to get to the rolling hills, we need to cross the entirety of Arcadia, and that's gonna take a while. Not for you, luckily, as I'll edit most of it to only keep the interesting parts. After crossing all the different areas, we finally end up in the rolling hills, close to the bathysphere. But Ryan, unhappy to let us pass, will decide that trying to destroy this entire forest to stop us is a good idea. The doors are locked until it is resolved. We need to find the help of a woman called Julie Langford. We've skipped a good bit of Arcadia with this, and the reason for that is that there is a lot of gunfights and not much else going on. We could probably talk a bit about the Tea Garden, with its secret caches everywhere, or those Houdini splicers with wooden masks that lit fire in an attempt to scare us, but ultimately, they aren't that relevant to the plot. As we continue on our way to meet Julie Langford, she asks us to find a Rosa Gallica for her, in order to save the trees. Here, the fetch quests of Arcadia start, as there is gonna be a few more after this, but since the gameplay loop remains fun, it is rarely bothersome. While we're at it, shooting in Bioshock isn't what I'd call great. A few weapons feel like they lack some punch, and the gunplay is overall quite average. In the game's defense, I probably picked one of the worst weapons to show you there, as the pistol and rifle are in my opinion the two biggest offenders. The other weapons fare much better in comparison to those two. It's not terrible, but as you could see there, it doesn't hold a candle to any recent FPS. We could give it an excuse that Bioshock is some sort of survival shooter, but already in Arcadia, things start to be very comfortable for the player. And unless you're playing in the highest difficulty setting, something that I only recommend to people loving the game, resources aren't that hard to get by. I would call it a survival shooter in the very first area. But as you start getting more weapons and plasmids, the game turns into a FPS RPG hybrid, and the survival experience starts to fade progressively, which isn't bad. I love Bioshock, it's just something that I've observed while playing the game. Here's the Rosa Gallica. Now we go back to Mrs. Langford.
You've brought the Rosa Gallica? Oh, what are you waiting for? An engraved invitation? Send it through the pneumo. Yes, this is perfect. Perfect. Come on up to my office. I'm letting you in now. I think I've got just the thing to put the green back in this forest. I've got the security system in this joint hacked, so those turrets won't bite. Come on up to my office.
Julie, we made a business deal, you and I, did we not? Money changed hands. Let me read to you from the agreement. Section 3, subsection 4.
Mr.
Ryan Industries maintains exclusive rights to the creation, use, and exploitation of the Lazarus Vector. Ownership is civilization.
Wait! No! Please!
Without it, we're back in the swamp.
Mr. Ryan!
Once again, Ryan strikes. This time, Julie Langford is the victim. Before going down, she offers us a very important gift. The password to our safe. For the Lazarus Vector, the key to save the forest of Arcadia. We'll need a few things to complete it, hence why we'll have a few fetch quests to do. We'll now be on our way to the farmer's market to find those components for the Lazarus Vector. The farmer's market is a quite small and will be an optional area if not for those fetch quests. There are the usual secrets, little sisters to rescue, and obviously the components to create the Lazarus Vector. And that's mostly it. It is an area closely linked to Arcadia, like the tavern was with Neptune's Bounty. The farmer's market is also one of the few areas in the game where we'll see a few splicers trying to take down a Big Daddy. We'll obviously use that opportunity to free the little sister accompanying him.
In 10 years in this dump, I've come to accept a very low standard of life. But even at the bottom of this fish tank, a man must have standards. The pathetic trou de cul down at Morley Winery has started putting water to his terrible wine. Water! When I confront him with this fact, he tells me, Pierre, this is not to worry. The water, she is distilled. It could be worse. I could take it right from the ocean.
I'm not entirely sure if I'm the good person to talk about whether or not Pierre's accent is fake or not. I can hear slightly his accent from time to time, but it's difficult to compare, as Bioshock is a game set in 1960, and French evolved with time. His accent could very well be an accent from that era. You guys will probably be better judges, as you have two examples right here. On a small note, the fact he calls the water she instead of it comes from the fact that it doesn't exist in French, and that water is a feminine word in that language. Not sure this information will ever be useful to you, but that's free. Take it. We now have to fetch the enzyme samples that can be found in abundance in the Silverwing apiary, where we'll have to deal with bees that, while not extremely dangerous, can be very annoying quickly. We'll be timed to check each beehives, and there will be splicers bothering us all the time there. We'll also learn to manipulate bees themselves as a plasmid, which I found to be interesting, but not very useful. Once out of this area, we'll have our 7 enzyme samples, and we'll be ready to head for the next component. In the Worley Winery, we'll find a few creepy splicers, some funny ragdoll, a shocking event, and obviously the distilled water we were missing. As we set foot in Arcadia again, the alarm starts ringing. Ryan sent the security drones to try to stop us. We're almost out of oxygen. Now's the time to craft the Lazarus Vector and save the forest of Arcadia. I do not believe we've seen the craft mechanic of Bioshock yet, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. A machine allows us to craft if we own the components needed. We mostly can craft special ammunitions, such as armor-piercing rounds, or automatic hack tools, for example. But for this mission, we need to craft the Lazarus Vector. Hacking the machine make it cheaper, or sometimes allow us to craft more things, but overall, crafting remains something secondary. It's certainly useful, but not mandatory. Now that we are in possession of the Lazarus Vector, it's time to save Arcadia. Obviously, it's not gonna be as easy as simply putting the Lazarus Vector. I honestly believe that what we're about to go through is one of the hardest parts of the game. Now, obviously, we're only playing in normal difficulty, and we have the Vita chambers activated, so it's not a big deal. We're not even gonna die here. But if you desire a challenge and push the difficulty to Survivor, which is the hardest difficulty setting, this is probably gonna be one of the toughest area in the game. The Survivor difficulty make the enemies much harder to kill, by giving them more health, agility and accuracy. It also removes a protection that leaves you with 1 health if you were to be fatally wounded. And finally, make the loot more scarce. There is no damage bonus for the enemies, as far as I know, but enemies in Bioshock already do a good amount of damage, even in normal difficulty. The only thing preventing us from dying often is that protection that often left us with 1 health point. I wouldn't necessarily suggest the Survivor difficulty to everyone, to be honest. It's not like the game is impossible, since you're allowed to save anywhere, anytime. But you'll be quickly killed and will have to use all the tools at your disposal, making it more of a survival shooter for the entirety of the game, in a sense. Which is obviously only true if you play with the Vita chambers off, as those prevent you from dying, and as long as you leave them activated, you'll sooner or later win against your opponent. I already talked about that, but in my opinion, letting the player decide whether or not he wants to have those Vita chambers is actually the best, as you can tune the difficulty to your liking. Those Vita chambers are activated by default, which makes sense story-wise, but is maybe subpar gameplay-wise. Now, it was a choice they had to make, story or gameplay, and they picked up the story. Who can blame them? Just remember, the game is really permissive with difficulty. It mostly depends if the player wants to have a hard time or not, and for that, I can definitely say that freedom is always good. We now should be done with killing every wave that attacked us, and can finally activate the Lazarus Vector to save Arcadia. Great, now we'll be on our way to Fort Frolic.
Why are you so resistant to the traditional methods of separating a man from his soul? You're not CIA, are you? You belong to Atlas, the one roach I can't seem to exterminate. Don't worry, I just need time to find the proper poison.
Fort Frolic's purpose is entertainment, so it is no surprise that we'll be able to play the slot machine when we first arrive, or have the fortune teller tell us our fate.
Well, I hope you have somebody to carry on your family name.
Breaking the windows of any shops of Fort Frolic rings the alarm, which makes sense. There is often a few good loots to grab, but I'm not entirely sure if it's worth the hassle.
That's better. Atlas Ryan. Atlas Ryan. Da 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 da. Time was, you could get something decent on the radio. The artist has a duty to seduce the ear and delight the spirit. So say goodbye to those two blowhards, and hello to an evening with Sander Cohen.
Welcome to Fort Frolic, home of Sander Cohen. We'll soon have the chance to meet him in person. As you can imagine, while the bathysphere is in front of us, it's not gonna be so quick and easy to reach. No, Sander wants to see us, and we'll have to comply to his demands. After killing a few splicers, Sander Cohen opened up the doors to the entirety of Fort Frolic. Lucky us. Since those wax figures bleed, I suppose no further details are needed to understand what they used to be. Sander Cohen wants to meet us at the Fleet Hall Theatre, so that's where we go next. As we arrive at the theatre, we are just in time to witness Fitzpatrick, one of Sander Cohen's disciples, play piano, but not everything seemed to be going well for him, as that piano has a bit of an explosive weight added to it. We'll be taking a picture of Fitzpatrick's dead body, and we're on our way to the atrium. Sander Cohen wants us to help him with his masterpiece. Fitzpatrick was the first part of it. As a gift, we'll receive the crossbow, which is probably the best weapon in the entire game. Sander wants us to find, kill, and photograph 3 of his disciples that betrayed him, and put those pictures on his masterpiece. Once that's done, he'll reward us and send us on our way to Andrew Ryan. Those 3 disciples are all bosses, more or less hard to kill. They'll now be our priorities, as if we do not kill them, we can't get out of here. Fort Frolic is loaded with those wax figures that used to be people and are kind of creepy. Sometimes they aren't entirely dead either, so we always have to be on our guard. I have to admit that this area had me a little anxious from time to time. The first disciple we'll meet is Martin Finnegan. His gimmick is ice, and he also happened to be the most dangerous out of the 3 disciples. In this fight, we'll mostly use fire and our Tommy gun to get rid of him. The good thing about it is that while Martin does a lot of damage, he also takes a lot. See how powerful the armor-piercing rounds are? That Big Daddy never stood a chance. Here is another example at how little damage they do to non-armored targets. Picking wisely your ammunition based on target is important in Bioshock. Security camera can also be huge allies. Nothing new, but we get to see a little more of Fort Frolic this way. Our next target is Silas Cobb, an explosive-wielding maniac trying to trap us with fire. He's only most dangerous at the beginning of the fight, due to the surprise element. Once we're out of that mess and finally able to retaliate, Cobb doesn't take long to go down.
I thought you had forgotten about poor Jasmine, but I am so glad you didn't.
I didn't know Fontaine had something to do with it. What are you doing? No, don't, please. I loved you, don't, please, no.
After this touching scene of cruelty and betrayal, we'll meet our last target, Hector Rodriguez. Out of the 3 targets we've been tasked to kill, he is the easiest to take down. His specialty could probably be summarized as being a good runner. Let's now head back to the Atrium to complete Cohen's masterpiece and finally escape this place. But obviously, things aren't gonna be so easy. As we complete his masterpiece, Cohen ends up getting excited and sends us a few splicers to try to kill us. A strange way to thank us, indeed, but we are getting kinda used to him being a nutcase already. Once complete, Cohen will show up to admire his masterpiece. In this very moment, it is actually possible to kill him and make him pay for what he did. But we are not exactly like this, are we? Now that we are done with Sander Cohen's little game, we have a mission to finish. Let's head to the Bathysphere. Our next step is Hephaestus. Hephaestus is the main power production source for Rapture, and also where Andrew Ryan's office is situated. In case you've never played the game before and wish to do so, I would suggest you to turn off the video right now, as we are about to enter heavy spoilers territory. For those that remain, let us continue.
Watch yourself. Ryan's stirring. We best keep to our knitting. It's time to either run the table or go home empty. Ryan's got the genetic key to Rapture. We get that from him, and we get out of this hellhole. We don't, then you and I are ghosts. Now would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch? It's time to finish this.
You can taste it, can't you? Andrew Ryan. I see Cohen's lost his touch, if you knew him well. He used to believe in the work, in the struggle. And now, he rots in that Neverland, waiting for someone to come and tell him he still got it. I suppose that's why he let you live.
After crossing a few rooms, we arrive in front of Andrew Ryan's office.
A worm looks up and sees the face of God. But look around. It's a regular convention of worms in here. They all had mothers, fathers, people who loved them. They got married, fucked their wives. What makes you think you're any different? I haven't chosen the spot for you on the wall yet. Let me know if you have a preference.
but it's closed. We'll be able to witness what Andrew Ryan does to traitors and rebels, as we'll recognize a good friend of his, Bill McDonagh, hung on the wall after he tried to kill Ryan to save Rapture.
I never killed a man, let alone a mate. But this is what things come to. I don't know if killing Mr. Ryan will stop the war, but I know it won't stop while that man breathes. I love Mr. Ryan, but I love Rapture. If I have to kill one to save the other, so be it.
Our objective will now be to find a way to open the office to confront Andrew Ryan, and we might just have a clue on how to do it. A few fellows that died trying left us a clue, that overloading the system with electricity could allow us to enter. We now have to go deeper into Hephaestus to find what we need.
Me? An assassin? Well, that's rich. I could have gone along, I suppose. Spliced up. Forgot. I believed in this place. I believed in Ryan. But when it got hard, Ryan didn't believe in Rapture. Didn't believe in the Great Chain. He believed in power. And now this place is busto. And my girl is... gone. Worse than gone. One of those... things. So am I an assassin? Well, only one way to find out.
Frozen enemies are defenseless and ready to be smashed, but they don't loot anything, which is bothersome. We are now in Hephaestus core, the area connecting all of the area of Hephaestus together. First area we'll visit is the heat core monitoring, which is kinda creepy. I have to admit, I felt kinda uneasy there, but once you realize you currently have a chemical thrower in your hands, you quickly end up seeing the good sides again. Which is exactly what I meant when I said that the game struggled to scale later on. Since we're a walking disaster, who is gonna stop us? 3 jackasses pretending to be dead to ambush us? I don't think so. That might change if you're truly playing on Survivor for the first time, obviously. But otherwise, you'll know what's about to happen and you'll be ready to cook them up for dinner. After finding an audio diary from Pablo Navarro that claimed to have slept with Anya Andersdotter, one of the rebels that tried to kill Andrew Ryan, we learned that he did send her to Kyber's office. And that's where we're going now, that we have the door code and information telling us to search there.
A man builds a city at the bottom of the sea. That's a marvel. Another man happens to be on a plane that crash lands on the same city in the middle of the ocean. Why, that sounds more like a miracle.
Once we arrive in front of Kyber's office, we notice 2 turrets guarding it. Those aren't a big threat to us, but we can already notice that the place is heavily guarded. We eventually find audio diaries from Kyber's, showing that he was working on something and was growing paranoid about getting caught. He even ended up turning Anya Andersdotter in to Ryan, as he thought she was one of his spies. The rest, we know it. She ended up on that wall alongside Bill McDonagh. Toward the end of Kyber's workshop, we'll find a secret room where Kyber's was supposedly creating an EMP bomb to to overload the electrical locks of Ryan's office. Since the power comes right from the volcanic vents, it isn't possible to cut it. But Kybers thought that it was maybe possible to do the opposite, in order to enter Ryan's office and kill him. Now the problem is that Kybers didn't have the time to completely build that bomb, but he left us the plan on an audio diary. We'll just have to find the components and finish what he started to confront Ryan. And here starts another fetch quest. We need 3 different components. The first one is easy enough. It is located in Kybers' office, that not only have security on the outside, but is also filled with traps inside. Now that we've obtained the nitroglycerin, we can go to the next 2 components. The first one is found on Big Daddies. It is called R34 cluster, that we'll be able to find on 2 dead daddies. As for the 2 others, we'll simply need to kill them ourselves, which by the time Erin Hephaestus us became a walk in the park. As for the 2-quarter cans of ionic gel, not much to do outside of finding them. Those aren't very difficult to find, so will quickly be done. The small bug with that little sister we saved that cannot reach the vent to escape. Do not worry though, she'll eventually make it through. Once we're done collecting those components, we can finally come back to the secret area in the workshop where the EMP bomb is and finalize it to see if it's gonna work or not. But before that, we have to put it in place, and for that we need to reach the core past the geothermal control area. Once there, we now need to redirect the magma flow in order to continue. This requires both our hands, so the best way to do it is to set up traps, which we did. But thinking about it now, I remember that those trap bolts from the crossbow could have been useful there.
Will these creatures kill you? Even I don't know. As you drag me closer to the abyss, you pull yourself right along with me. I offer you a quick death, Parasite. It will be preferable to what you will learn if you win.
As we turn the valve, we see waves of splicers trying to stop us, but those 2 turrets definitely do the job. We can now take the elevator to the core and finish what we started.
So far away from your family, from your friends, from everything you ever loved. But for some reason, you like it here. You feel something you can't quite put your finger on. Think about it for a second, and maybe the word will come to you. Nostalgia. What did Atlas offer you? A piece of my plundered city? Mark my words, your only reward will be a knife in the back.
Upon activating the EMP bomb, as predicted, the core overload led to many problems in the electrical infrastructures of Rapture.
Christ, what a racket you're making down there! If you surge the core, then there's only one more task to be done. Head on back to Ryan's Gate and throw the circuit breaker. That'll let you right into his place.
Now is our time. We need to blow up the door leading into Ryan's office.
Though my physical defenses fall, you'll not defeat me. My strength is not in steel and fire, but in my intellect and will. You hear me, Atlas? Andrew Ryan offers you nothing but ashes!
Finally, we'll see face to face with Andrew Ryan. Enjoy one of the most memorable cutscenes ever made.
In the end, all that matters to me is me. And all that matters to you is you. It is the nature of things. Even in the Book of Lies, sometimes you find truth. There is indeed a season for all things. And now that I see you flesh to flesh and blood to blood, I know I cannot raise my hand against you. But know this, you are my greatest disappointment. Does your master hear me? Atlas, you can kill me, but you will never have my city. My strength is not in steel and fire. That is what the parasites will never understand. A season for all things. A time to live and a time to die. A time to build and a time to destroy! child, there is one final thing to discuss.
What? Ryan set the core to self-destruct. This is different than what you did. He's got a mind to take down the whole damn city. Get in there and whack the chunk before the whole joint blows!
Advanced deployment, Lot 111, Dr. Sejong, client Fontaine Futuristics. Baby is now a year old, weighs 58 pounds, and possesses gross musculature of a fit 19-year-old. The results are disappointing, but within expected tolerances. Did you daughter your puppy? She's very pretty.
Thank you, Papa Sushon.
Break her neck for me. What? Break that sweet puppy's neck. No, please. Break that puppy's neck. Would you kindly? No. No. Very good.
The assassin has overcome my final defense, and now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A farm. A family, an airplane, a crash, and then this place. Was there really a family? Did that airplane crash, or was it hijacked, forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they are activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master? Was a man sent to kill, or a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys. Come in. Stop. Would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this thing? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit. Would you kindly? Stand. Would you kindly? Run. Stop. Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys. Kill! A man chooses! A slave obeys! Obey!
Hurry now! Grab Ryan's genetic key! Now would you kindly put it in that goddamn machine? Nice work by you all. It's time to end this little masquerade. There ain't no Atlas kid. Never was. Selling my line of work takes on a variety of aliases. Hell, once I was even a Chinaman for 6 months. But you've been a sport, so I guess I owe you a little honesty. The name's Frank Fontaine.
I gotta say, I had a lot of business partners in my life, but you, of course, the fact that you were genetically conditioned to bark like a cocker spaniel when I said, would you kindly, might have had something to do with it, but still. Now, as soon as that machine finishes processing the genetic key you just fished off Ryan, I'm gonna run Rapture tits to toes. You've been a pal. You know what they say? Never mix business with friendship. Thanks for everything, kid. Don't forget to say hi to Ryan for me.
Welcome back, child. Welcome to the city where you were born. You are angry at Fontaine, yes? Now you know the truth. You are his tool, brought back to Rapture to save him. You have saved many of my little ones. I owe you a debt. While you sleep, I undo some of Fontaine's mental conditioning. His control is no longer complete, but he can still pull some very unpleasant strings. We made your mind with many locks and keys. Fontaine has most of those keys, but not all. Suchong designed your mind, taught Fontaine to control you. You might find answers in Suchong's flat in Mercury Suites.
Tenenbaum and the little girl saved us from Fontaine. Tenenbaum removed a few mental conditioning while we were asleep, but she couldn't remove them all. We won't be forced anymore to answer to the phrase, would you kindly? But we'll soon see that it isn't the only trick that Fontaine has on us. For now though, I think we need to clarify a few things to be sure that everyone is on the same page. Jack is indeed the son of Andrew Ryan, and this is the reason why both only Andrew and Jack can use Vita Chambers. The only reason why Andrew Ryan didn't revive is because he did deactivate the Vita Chamber in his office prior to our encounter. We do not exactly know why. He probably wanted to destroy the entire city and to be done with all of this. Andrew Ryan saw his entire dream being taken from him slowly for years, and everything he has done ended up backfiring on him. We cannot blame the guy, even though he was far from perfect. Jack's mom is that exotic dancer called Jasmine Jolene that Ryan murdered once he heard about what she did. She sold the fetus to Tenenbaum, who was working under Fontaine at the time. Fontaine ended up giving the fetus to Tenenbaum and Suchong to experiment on it, and ultimately raise it to be his ultimate weapon. Jack, at only 3 years old, had the strength and look of a 19 years old. Jack is expected to be currently 4 years old as we play through the game. That also explains why Tenenbaum decided not to shoot us earlier. She simply raised us along the Little Sisters, and simply hoped that we could save them from their fate. Suchong in all of this is mostly responsible for Jack's mental conditioning, and also implemented memories of a life that never happened in his brain. His memories of his parents are fake. They never existed. All of this leads us to this plane that miraculously fell exactly where it needed to fall. We can briefly see, when we talk with Ryan, what's inside the gifts box at the beginning of the game. A message with the phrase, "Would you kindly coordinate?" and a gun. Jack was the one that made that plane crash at this exact area, without being conscious of it. Why doesn't he remember it? I do not know. Maybe because it was the first time the phrase was used on him after a long time? Or maybe due to the crash? Or maybe it was simply more convenient for the plot. Atlas in the end was also all a lie. Moira and Patrick never existed. Who was in the submarine then? Nobody really knows. Fontaine just became master of changing identity to survive, and Atlas was one of them. Our journey to Rapture was Frank Fontaine's plan from the start. We are his ace in the hole, as he likes to call us. Our sole reason to exist was to kill our father, Andrew Ryan, so that Fontaine could take over. And since now he doesn't need us anymore, he would like to get rid of us. But we are not gonna let that happen. As we head toward the exit of Tenenbaum's safe house, we hear a communication from Fontaine.
And now you've got hooked up with Tenenbaum, huh, kid? She's a regular mother goose. Alright, fun's fun, kid. But now, go get stepped on by a big daddy. Would you kindly? Huh? I says, would you kindly go get stepped on by a big daddy? Seems like Mother Goose has been playing around in your egg salad. If you won't dance to that tune, I got others. Code Yellow. I just told your brain to tell your heart to stop beating. Not right off the bat, mind you. The heart's a stubborn muscle, but it ain't that stubborn.
Once you are free of Fontaine's control, then you can have your revenge. And we can keep my little ones out of his filthy hands.
As he understands that Would You Kindly doesn't work anymore on us, he uses another trick in his bag, Code Yellow. Our brain tells our heart to stop beating, but that's gonna take a while before we die, since the heart is a resilient organ. The biggest downside of that effect is that our health bar is gonna progressively shrink as we progress, which makes it obviously easier to die. Now, our goal is clear. Go to Suchong's apartment in Olympus Heights to find a cure to Fontaine's control on us.
That's it, kid. You're busto. My new friends will catch up with you soon. Kid. I hope they make it quick.
His new friends are the Splicers. They answer to pheromones, and therefore to the one in control, which is now Fontaine, since we did all the hard work for him. In Suchong's apartment, we find an audio diary, and eventually hear about an antidote commissioned by Fontaine, in case he would end up on the other side of the gun himself. They call it the Lot 192. Tenenbaum tells us that she stole a dose of the antidote from Suchong, and that she left it in her apartment, here, on the 3rd floor. She simply didn't know what it was, prior to our discovery. While in Olympus Heights, we'll meet Sander Cohen, this time in his apartment. Two of his dancers are busy dancing, and we feel like having some peace. Mr. Cohen will obviously not take that well, but our heart isn't big enough to forgive twice. Sander Cohen will meet his end here and now. Sander behaved like a Houdini splicer, but with a lot more health points. Basically, he teleports and uses fire plasmids. The beginning of the fight is tough, but once we use the right tool, he's left speechless. Killing him this way gives us access to his room, which is useful due to the weapon upgrade station located inside of it. but otherwise, we only did it for the sport. As our health is shrinking dangerously low, we now have to find a cure as quickly as possible. We move in direction of Tenenbaum's apartment, but Fontaine was faster, and the place is already torn apart. Tenenbaum seemed to think that Fontaine moved the antidote to his penthouse in this very same area. We need a keycode to reach it. Luckily, Mr. Paparazzi got our back. As we arrive in Fontaine's penthouse, we meet a few splicers waiting for us, a few traps that will hack, and nothing more than that. The lot 192 is left with very little protection. As we drink it, it appears that it is indeed an antidote. Our health bar replenish, but the dose is too small and it messes with our plasmids, forcing them to change every 20 seconds. This is honestly painful, and until we get another dose, we won't be able to choose which plasmid we want to use. Luckily, that doesn't affect our firearms. A few seconds after drinking the lot 192, the alarm starts to ring. The security camera that we've hacked has spotted intruders. Time to fight. Our next goal is Suchong's laboratory in Artemis suits. There, we are sure to find another dose of the lot 192. Artemis suits is around Apollo Square. Right now we're currently in Mercury suits, which was built for the elite of Rapture, in Olympus Heights. Let's just say that Apollo Square and Artemis suits are for those that were slightly less lucky. Apollo Square, and more so Artemis suits, are hell on earth. It's loaded with security, traps, and there is a bunch of splicers everywhere, ready to cut our throats. It is probably one of the areas in the game where I saw the most amount of enemies and traps, and I guess it makes sense, since we're pretty far already. The game took me around 20 hours to complete, challenges excluded, and we're almost at the end right now. We have 2 levels left to visit after this one, and then we'll be done. They'll be much shorter though. Right now, we're in Mercury suits, and it's basically where all the poor people live. It's also where Suchong's free clinic is located.
Clinical Trial Protector System, Plasmid Lot 255. Dr. Suchong, client Ryan Industries. Very frustrating day. I can't seem to get the damn big daddies to imprint on the little brats. The protection bond is just not forming.
Papa Suchong?
Get away. Maybe if I modify the genetic sequence... Shush! Sure! The sequence to allow for... Get away, you filthy little shit! What? What are you doing? Get back! Get back!
We finally find the lot 192 there, alongside Suchong's body. We are now completely free of Fontaine's grip on us, and our plasmids are back to normal. Now it's time to settle things. We'll be on our way to Point Prometheus. As we arrive from the bathysphere, we meet with Fontaine, that throws us a Molotov. We are now engaging into a chase with him, where he'll do everything he possibly can to slow us down, such as igniting gas canisters or closing doors in front of us. And since it is heavily scripted, well, there isn't much for us to do outside of waiting. This whole sequence just serves as a prelude for the final boss fight that is gonna happen very soon. Fontaine is now hiding behind a door that only Little Sisters can open. We'll have to look, sound, and smell like a Big Daddy in order to hope to be able to enter. And it just happened that Point Prometheus is actually a Big Daddy factory, so we might find everything that we need close by. First, we'll go fetch the pheromones in the Little Wonders Educational Facility, an area where they hold the Little Sisters in cells, in order to train them to harvest Adam from dead bodies. Well, that's the usual purpose of this area, but since it seems to be abandoned, or more precisely, it seems that everyone has been slaughtered, we are not gonna meet any Little Sister outside of 1 or 2, accompanied by a Big Daddy, as usual. There is still a few splicers, if those still count as human. Okay, we've got the perfume. Now we'll go to the library to find the boots.
Where you gonna go? Your life? Your family? They're a fairy tale, kid. No more real than something you read about in the Saturday Evening Post. Poor bastard. A motherless freak, whipped up in a half-baked science experiment.
Next step is failsafe armored escort. We'll have to pass through a decontamination chamber to get there, and it is in this area that we'll modify our voice to be closer to a Big Daddy. And then we'll head to the suit assembly line to find our bodysuits and helmet. That voice change seems awfully painful and permanent.
Ryan sent over extra munitions. He must have suspected trouble. I will lock them up near the protector labs and set the code to 1921. I don't expect we'll ever be needing them though. Once Big Daddy is ready, nobody crossed the Big Daddy.
Suchong learned that well himself. A few plasmids can be upgraded once you're far enough in the game. The difference is only in the damage, as far as I know. Now that we've found the bodysuit and helmet, we have only one thing left to do. Hit the vent to summon a little sister that will open the door. We are now in the proving grounds, the area where the Big Daddies and little sister learn to do their job and work together. An area full of danger, and also probably the worst area in the entire game. Luckily it's quite short. If the area before was remaining quite good, this one is very slow paced, as we'll need to cover a little sister while she harvests Adam from dead bodies. We'll basically be acting like a Big Daddy, and useless to say that it's hella boring. It is hands down the worst area in the game, and it's not even up for debate. I'd gladly let every one of you suffer with me, but I do have a heart. We'll skip all of this to go toward the end of the area, where we'll be fighting another Big Daddy. That one did bet on the wrong horse if he felt that he could stand a chance against us. Once that Big Daddy bites the dust, we're a few meters away from the point of no return and our battle with Fontaine, so we better prepare ourselves accordingly before we confront Fontaine and settle everything. The little sister that helped us through the door will give us her needle to aid us in the battle with our nemesis that is now overdosing on Adam. Fontaine is a pretty mediocre boss. He has tons of weaknesses to very simple things, and overall isn't a really memorable boss fight. The fight will start with us draining Adam from him, and we'll need to do that 3 more times as the fight goes on. But before we can drain more Adam from him, we need to lower his health bar to 0. Fontaine's first form is fire. He'll throw fireballs and try to charge us down. Overall, as long as we sidestep, we are not risking much. In his second phase, he turns into Mr. Freeze and summons security bots to help him. The downside of this is that it's easy to make them help us instead. We can either hack 2 security bots or simply use a security bullseye, a plasmid that makes Fontaine the target of the security, and those security bots can honestly hurt him quite badly. What's even better is that with this plasmid, the security bots will ignore us completely to focus solely on Fontaine. In this form, he does the same thing as the first one, but it's ice instead of fire. And finally, Fontaine's last form is lightning, where he'll summon splicers to attack us and will be slightly faster and more dangerous. Then again, there is a plasmid called Enrage that makes the splicers attack each other or Fontaine, which can help us in this form. Lightning is definitely the strongest form of Fontaine, but it's nothing to write home about either. Outside of all those plasmids that can help us immensely against him, Fontaine's biggest problem is those bugs that often have him stuck everywhere. I've done that fight twice, and both times he ended up completely stuck during at least one phase, making it an easy target for me to finish. Fontaine is definitely a disappointing final boss, but does that tarnish everything? I do not think so.
You built. I sent you topside. I called you back, showed you what you was capable of. Even that life you thought you had, that was something I dreamed up and had tattooed inside your head. Now if you don't call that family, I don't know what is. And
They offered you this city. And you refused it. And what did you do instead? What I've come to expect of you. You saved them. You gave them the one thing that was stolen from them. A chance. A chance to learn. To find love. To live. And in the end, what was your reward? You never said. But I think I know. A family.
The reason why I went for this ending is that it is much more memorable than the other one in my opinion. Jack was born from a father that tried to kill him, a mother that traded him for money. The two persons raising him did experiment on him and implant false memories. Jack entered Rapture as a tool and escaped it as a man. By saving those little sisters, he saves himself in return. Once the game is finished, we also have access to 3 challenge rooms. To be perfectly precise, those maps are available even before finishing the game, but it makes more sense to do it after being done with the main story. 2 of those 3 maps could be summarized as solving a puzzle as fast as possible, and completing a few different rooms as quickly as possible for the last one. The first map, called The Eye in Team, is all about killing a Big Daddy without having access to any weapons, which basically is solved by baiting him into a trap. The second map is called A Shocking Turn of Events, and we need to use electric ammunitions in order to grant electricity to the Ferris wheel and make it spin 6 times to rescue the little sister stuck on it. The third map is called World of Hurt, and this one will have to clear 8 rooms as fast as possible, while being allowed to buy your own weapons, plasmids, etc. This is by far the hardest challenge out of all of them. I wouldn't call those challenge rooms great, but I've seen worse. It's very much in line with additional content from those types of games. It probably took minimal dev time to make, and it's a nice little bonus if you enjoy the game and its mechanics. But nothing to write home about either. But that's not all. Once you'll be done with Bioshock, you'll also be able to replay the game with all your weapons, plasmids, and upgrades unlocked in a new Game Plus. This game mode is especially useful if you want to truly get all the plasmids and gin tonics the game has to offer, as it's impossible to purchase every single upgrade in a single run. But I'll be honest with you, the difficulty of the game doesn't seem to change, so you'll probably be done with your second run in a few hours, as it offers very little challenge from the beginning till the end. Now, since Bioshock is partially a critique to objectivism, I think it is time we talk about it a little bit. Objectivism was founded around 1951 by an author born in 1905 called Alisa Zinovievna Rosenbaum, but more well known as Ayn Rand. As you can tell by her name, Ayn Rand was indeed born in the Russian Empire, and to be more precise, in a middle-class family that ended up losing everything due to the rise of communism after the death of the Tsar and the coup led by the Bolsheviks. All of this led Ayn Rand to despise communism and believe that laissez-faire capitalism is the way things should be. Since laissez-faire is a French word that could be translated literally to let it be, but that could also be translated more clearly as hands-off capitalism. Basically, a capitalist society where the state and economics are separated, in the same way as the state and the church. Ayn Rand made laissez-faire capitalism the core of objectivism, with the idea that individuals should act in their own self-interest and seek happiness this way. Andrew Ryan is a character inspired by Ayn Rand that thinks the same way, had the same life trauma as her in his childhood, having to flee because of communism. His name even is an anagram of Ayn Rand's name, with a few letters more. Although, Andrew Ryan possesses one more thing that matters compared to Ayn Rand. He's a billionaire. And with all that money, he's gonna be able to create his own city underwater, where he'll be able to escape all the politics of the outside world and create his own paradise, free from all the parasites. Rapture. Rapture is heavily inspired by, obviously, Atlantis, but also even more by Atlas Shrugged, a book of Ayn Rand, where the world is turning to crap due to a lazy and parasite government, living off the few good and strong people that carry the world. That is, until every single one of those good and strong men decide to go into exile and leave the world to its fate, only for it to crumble. As you hear this, you might tell yourself, there is a problem. And yes, there is definitely one. Ayn Rand doesn't really have a good reputation. Many people compare her work to bad fanfiction, but since Bioshock is a critic to her philosophy, we'll see that very soon. Now back to Ryan. In order to make his dream a reality, Andrew will require a lot of people to build Rapture for him. Because while he is a rich industrialist, a man cannot do everything by himself. Ryan decided that he only wanted the very best of humankind, and that everyone that helped build the city would be invited to live in it, in order to prevent the outside world from knowing where Rapture is located. Once the construction was over, unfortunately those people that helped build the city would have to adapt, as there was no more work for them, which left them in leaking, crowded, temporary housing, until they could bounce. Many could never. Ryan's philosophy led him to never help the poor, assuming that they would find work and rise again to prosperity, since there was no parasites in Rapture. But as we all know, in a society not everyone can be rich, and for all the rich people living comfortably, there is thousands of poor people doing what the rich do not want to do. In a society led by objectivism, the poor people that couldn't find work were simply ignored and left to their own demise, because everybody was encouraged to be selfish in Rapture. Approximately at the same time period, Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum was passing through the docks where she noticed a smuggler whose hands were previously crippled, now restored to normal functionality after being bitten by a sea slug. After researching that sea slug, she found a substance that could heal damaged cells and even go as far as resurrect them. That substance ended up being named Adam. It allowed people, as we know, to manipulate their DNA and the possibility to gain superpowers. After being turned down by all the reputable research facilities, Tenenbaum finally found someone that agreed to fund her research, Frank Fontaine. During her research, Tenenbaum found that only young girls were suitable hosts for the sea slug to produce massive amounts of Adam, which originated the Little Sisters. With that discovery, Tenenbaum ended up becoming a major figure in Rapture's scientific community, and ensured financial success for herself and especially Fontaine Futuristics. Fontaine, needing more Adam for his products, had to find a way to find more hosts, and that led to the creation of the Little Sisters Orphanage, a place where financially pressed families could send their little girls for care and schooling. At the same time, Fontaine also created Fontaine's Home for the Poor, in order to gain the support of all the destitute people of Rapture that had no one else to turn to. Tenenbaum later on discovered the side effect of Adam and shady business of Fontaine, but didn't seem to mind it all that much. As for Andrew Ryan, he heard about the side effects as well, but simply suggested to Fontaine's competitors to offer a better product, even after some members of his council begged him to regulate the plasmid market. He simply ignored them, as his idea of a society was one where the government didn't meddle in economics. As a reminder, Adam causes some serious addiction and can alter physical and mental state of people consuming too much of it. Once Fontaine Futuristics was able to produce Adam on a massive scale, gin tonics and plasmids started to be sold to anybody that could afford them. At first, Andrew Ryan was satisfied with the success of Fontaine, even going as far as praising him to be a prime example of the type of individual that Rapture was built to propagate. Andrew Ryan had one single rule in Rapture: smuggling was forbidden, as it could lead to Rapture being discovered by the outside world, and if Andrew Ryan disliked one thing, it was the outside world. Fontaine obviously never respected that rule, and since smuggling was forbidden, it was also a very juicy market that made Fontaine pretty wealthy. Wealthy enough to be able to enter the Adam market as soon as an opportunity presented itself. Andrew Ryan forgot one crucial rule there: forbidding something doesn't mean that it will disappear. It simply makes it a black market. And when things have to be done in secrecy, behind the government's back, ruthlessness becomes an important quality, to be sure that nobody crosses you. Andrew Ryan, with his fear of the outside world, created his worst enemy, Fontaine. Fontaine knew that even though his empire slowly started to become bigger than Ryan, Ryan still had Rapture wrapped under his fingertips due to the security system being coded to his DNA. Fontaine eventually discovered that Jasmine Jolene, a mistress of Andrew Ryan, was pregnant with his child. Fontaine eventually used Tenenbaum to make an offer to Jolene, that had money problems, in exchange for the embryo of her child. Fontaine now had a plan to make Ryan fall, a long con that would take him over 12 years to set up, from the construction of Rapture until his ace in the hole, Jack, come into play. Jack was born in 1956, roughly 4 years prior to the events happening in BioShock. Dr. Brigitte Tenenbaum and Yi Su-chong were assigned to the development of Jack. After extensive body modification and mind altering, Jack was sent to the surface at the age of 2. Jack had the appearance of a 19-year-old man when he roughly was 3 years old. It is also heavily supposed that Jack possessed superhuman strength and resilience due to all the body modifications that were tried on him, making him able to survive the plane crash and even more so, all the dangers of Rapture. So it is no surprise that after a few years, Ryan began to suspect Fontaine of various crimes, such as smuggling or murder. And considering Fontaine's monopoly on Adam, he was now threatening the whole harmony of the city, and something had to be done about him. It is currently unknown if Ryan started to suspect Fontaine due to evidences, or simply because he wanted to get rid of someone becoming too influent for his taste. There is some evidences showing that Ryan wasn't really keen on sharing his city with other people, such as Sophia Lamb, but we'll talk about her in BioShock 2, not here. Ryan at first attempted to arrest Fontaine for smuggling, as it was the easiest thing to prove, but Fontaine decided that going down with a fight would be much more beneficial to him, as he could try to fake his death this way. And he did. In 1958, 2 years prior to the events of BioShock, Fontaine became Atlas, the hero of the people. Meanwhile, Andrew Ryan decided to nationalize Fontaine Futuristics, and thus became its head. A baffling decision is the least we could say, considering his stance on free market. Ryan justified this as necessary to maintain economic stability, which was against Ryan's ideals, as by doing that, the government finally meddled into economics. Both Su-chong and Tenenbaum ended up working for Ryan after the nationalization of Fontaine Futuristics. The death of Fontaine wasn't really taken well by the population, as he did a lot for the poor people. But the nationalization of Fontaine Futuristics was the straw that broke the camel's back. This betrayal ended up starting the decline of Rapture. Bill McDonagh, member of the council and one of Ryan's oldest friends, ended up resigning from the council in protest of Ryan's actions. Rapture became filled with civil unrest as Fontaine, now under the alias Atlas, started to rally people against the police force of Rapture. Everything became serious on New Year's Eve 1958, when the rebels started to attack various areas of the city, most notably the Kashmir restaurant, where Andrew Ryan was supposed to be, with Diane McClintock. Their plan failed, as Ryan was simply never there, due to him working late in Hephaestus, instead of joining his love interest for the party. Ryan, unable to bring back peace in Rapture, ended up detenting most of Atlas supporters in Apollo Square, in order to isolate the dangerous troublemakers. Soon enough, Ryan faced another problem. The majority of Rapture started to become addicted to Adam, due to the ongoing civil war that encouraged citizens to always consume more of it. Ryan had to adjust the Little Sister program that was once created by Fontaine, in order to have the Little Sisters now harvest Adam from dead bodies. This is when Dr. Yi Su-chong was commissioned to create the Big Daddies, in order to protect the Little Sisters. People chosen to become Big Daddies were often either criminally insane or political dissidents imprisoned in Persephone. And if you do not remember Persephone, it is because we didn't talk about it yet. We'll see that in BioShock 2. Following this, the orphanage was no longer enough, as Ryan needed more Adam. He then resorted to kidnapping young girls to increase the number of Little Sisters available. With no end to the civil war in sight, different types of vending machines started to appear everywhere in the streets, selling ammunitions, medikits, or other tools to allow citizens to fight in the civil war. As things are turning for the worst, Ryan has no other choices than to forbid public congregations, a strict curfew, and martial law inside Apollo Square, which is where most of Atlas supporters are. That's not all. Ryan will also set up a checkpoint at the entrance of Apollo Square that will only allow authorized personnel in and out. Bathysphere travels are also locked down, and access only allowed to Ryan and his closest followers through their genetic frequencies. As Rapture continue to be in turmoil, most citizens end up affected and have their life destroyed by the constant feud between the rebels and Ryan. Some of them, such as Anya Andersdotter and Kybers, even going as far as trying to plan Ryan's death, but to no avail, as they end up dying with little result. During the darkest hours of the rebellion, another member of the council called Anna Culpepper spoke against Ryan, Sander Cohen, and Rapture. She even went as far as releasing an album called Ryan's Songbird, with the purpose of mocking Sander Cohen and Andrew Ryan. After all, Rapture was always about freedom of speech. Andrew Ryan said it himself, the artist should not fear the censor. Anna Culpepper thought that Sander Cohen was nothing but a mere propaganda tool, used by Ryan in order to promote his ideals. Ryan didn't take very well Anna Culpepper's songs, considering that this kind of behavior could not be tolerated in an ongoing civil war. Ryan asked Sullivan, another member of the council, responsible for the security of Rapture, and man that supposedly killed Fontaine, to assassinate Anna Culpepper, to silence her once and for all. Anna's death is another stain on Andrew Ryan's way of life, as it shows his hypocrisy to only allow free speech if he doesn't have anything to lose from it. Censoring Anna Culpepper meant that freedom of speech was definitely gone from Rapture. Sullivan, head of the security, slowly understood that he wasn't on the good side, and started to feel remorse about everything he's done, and has never been seen after Anna Culpepper's death. It is highly supposed that he killed himself in his office. As the civil war was raging on, Bill McDonagh urged Ryan to seek a peace treaty by offering Fontaine Futuristics to Atlas. Ryan refused, as he was adamant on regaining Rapture no matter what. McDonagh came to the conclusion that as long as Ryan was to be alive, there could be no peace. He then decided that the only way was to kill him. We unfortunately know that Bill failed, as his body was seen hanging on a wall in front of Ryan's office in Hephaestus. Soon enough, Dr. Yi Su-chong will suggest to Ryan a way to break the stalemate opposing him to Atlas and stop the war. This by altering the structure of available plasmids in order to make users susceptible to mental suggestion by pheromones, thus taking away the free will of every citizen of Rapture. The ultimate betrayal of everything Andrew Ryan believes in. Only Su-chong and Tenenbaum were capable of such prowess in the genetic field, as they both pioneered Adam, but since Tenenbaum disappeared to save the Little Sisters, only Su-chong was left, and while his loyalty was dubious at best, Ryan was paying him, which was enough for him. Ryan agreed, saying that if Atlas were to win, then he would make everyone slaves, and free will would disappear anyway. With the pheromones, Ryan had now rallied the vast majority of the citizens left of Rapture under his banner. Atlas was left in a terrible situation, with only a few followers that never consumed Adam. His only choice was now to use his haste in the hole, and that is how Bioshock starts. What happens next? You know it. Andrew Ryan always had a golden seat in Rapture. He decided on everything, and when things didn't go the way he wanted, he started to show dictatorial behaviors. He never cared about the poverty of the least fortunate, even though they made his dream possible. Not everyone started equal in Rapture. Ryan never started on the same foot as all the others. He only started to care about Fontaine when he was close to become more influent than him, and once the problem finally was dealt with, he nationalized Fontaine Futuristics, as Adam was obviously becoming the most profitable market, and whoever owned it would end up sooner or later as the most powerful person in Rapture. He promoted free speech for the artists as long as it wouldn't be detrimental to him. And finally, when he had to decide between his ideals and winning, he decided that winning and staying up ahead was more important. Andrew Ryan in BioShock could be represented as a greedy and immature man-child with a huge ego that couldn't be bothered paying for others as he thought people should earn what they deserve. Ironic, considered his whole fortune came on a stroke of luck of him having oil on his property. His ideals supposedly encouraged others to accept competitors in order to become better. But when it involved him, he was ready to change the rules the second he would lose. His own downfall comes from him forbidding anyone to leave or to bring goods from outside, which is against the freedom that objectivism promotes. Then refusing to regulate a market fueled on kidnapping children from families and making people addicted to drugs. He then later on ends up abandoning everything he believes in to stay on top, such as freedom of speech or even free will, the cornerstone on which Rapture was built. All of this show a lack of self-awareness and psychopathic behaviors. Rapture probably started as an objectivist city, but very quickly turned into a dictatorship, simply because objectivism doesn't understand the nature of man. You're now free to have a beginning of opinion on objectivism, and hopefully you now understand how it impacts the story of BioShock. Obviously, BioShock was crafted to criticize it from the very beginning, or more specifically, I believe that BioShock was meant to criticize Atlas Shrugged, as they share many similarities, at least at the beginning. Because in Atlas Shrugged, the elites leave the world. Everything is very black and white. The elites are the very best at what they do, but the parasites are unable to do anything and are corrupt and evil. It is too simplistic, painting human as either good or bad, when in reality it's often both. It's not because someone cheats on his wife that he's ready to kill his neighbor, or that he cannot give money to the poor. It's not all that easy. I feel BioShock took that world of black and white, where the people of Rapture are supposed to be all perfect elites, while the outside world is black, full of corrupt people and parasites, and then added Frank Fontaine in it. Yes, Frank Fontaine is obviously a very bad person. In Rapture, he's the wolf in sheep's clothing. He hides and preys on the system, because the system is simply not able to defend itself against him. You'll find some people advocating for objectivism and some others completely against it. As for me, I believe there is a bit of good to take in everything, but blindly believing one thing do not seem very wise. Maybe objectivism can be good for individuals, but for a society, I do not think it will lead to anything but disaster. Since I'm not a great philosopher or a great mind to begin with, I won't delve deeper in a domain that I do not master, in order to avoid looking like a clown. All in all, BioShock is a great game that didn't age much considering that game was released 17 years ago. It has a pretty average gameplay that is saved by how much freedom it leaves to the player. The sound design is one of the best things in the game, together with the story, level, and world design. Every single voice actors in BioShock killed it, and it's only a little bit sad that the audio mixing is so bad. The soundtrack, while not something I listen to outside of the game, fits perfectly BioShock in every way. And if you do not desire to play BioShock after having seen this video, at least you'll know enough about the game to act like you did. In case you desire to purchase BioShock, I strongly suggest you to pick up the trilogy, and maybe even to take a look at John Shirley's book, called Rapture, BioShock. I know, shocking title. And lastly, do not forget,
a man chooses, a slave obeys.